Dalton Crow had been summoned many times in his life. Usually by angry commanders. Sometimes by station security. Once by a bartender who insisted Dalton still owed him 3 credits. But never, never, by an empire. The message on his old datapad glowed in bright silver letters. Imperial Command. Your presence is required on Helix Prime immediately. Dalton stared at it for a full minute. Then he blinked. Then he turned the device upside down. Is this a joke? He asked the cargo pilot beside him. The pilot didn't even look up. If it was a joke, you'd already be arrested. That's comforting, Dalton muttered. Helix Prime. The throne world. The heart of the Helix Empire. 40 star systems. Hundreds of fleets. The most powerful ruler in known space. And somehow, they wanted him. A retired soldier with a worn jacket and a habit of talking too much. The arrival. Hours later, Dalton stood on a landing platform made of black glass that reflected the sky like a mirror. The city rose around him in impossible spirals. Towers twisted upward like silver vines. Floating bridges connected buildings that hovered in the air. Drones moved silently overhead, scanning everything, including him. One drone paused in front of his face. It made a soft, judgmental beep. Yes, yes, Dalton sighed. I know. My boots are outdated. A group of tall palace attendants approached him. They moved in perfect synchronization. Their long ears curved elegantly backward, and their pale skin glowed faintly in the sunlight. They bowed. Dalton tried to bow back. It looked more like he dropped something and tried to pick it up. Veteran Dalton Crow, one attendant said. Her radiance awaits you. That's never a sentence that ends casually, Dalton whispered. They led him forward. The floor beneath them was transparent. Below it floated a garden made of glowing trees and drifting clouds of purple gas. Dalton tried not to look down. I assume this walkway won't suddenly disappear, he asked. It has never failed, the attendant replied calmly. Today feels special, he muttered. The throne room. Massive doors opened with a deep hum. The throne chamber was enormous. A ceiling of shifting galaxies rotated above. The air shimmered softly with holographic light. And at the far end, on a floating platform of chrome and crystal, she stood. Empress Selenia. Her long golden hair flowed like liquid sunlight. Her pale skin carried a soft glow. Her posture was calm and controlled, like someone who commanded entire star systems with a single word. But her eyes were uncertain. Leave us, she said quietly. The entire court exited at once. Dalton swallowed. Right, he said softly. So this is either very good or very bad. Selenia stepped down from her throne. Slowly, carefully. Do you recognize me? She asked. Dalton blinked. Unless you were my drill sergeant in disguise, no. She lifted a pendant from her neck. Old metal. Burned at the edges. Human. Dalton froze. It was his old unit insignia. The one he lost 20 years ago. The one he thought was destroyed in the fire. And suddenly, the memories returned. Smoke. Explosions. A colony burning under alien attack. A small girl hiding under broken metal beams. Terrified. Crying. He had found her alone. He stayed with her for 3 days in the ruins. Shared his ration bars. Told her terrible jokes. Carried her when she was too weak to walk. Then evacuation came. Chaos. They were separated. He never learned her name. I was that child, Selenia said softly. The room felt smaller. You carried me, she continued. You shielded me with your own body. You told me I was brave when I was shaking. Dalton rubbed his face. You remember the jokes? He asked weakly. I remember all of it. She stepped closer. I searched for you for 15 years. His head snapped up. Why? Her voice trembled slightly. Because you saved me without knowing who I was. Without expecting anything. I needed to understand why. Dalton looked down at the insignia. I didn't know who you were, he said quietly. You were just a kid who needed help. Silence filled the chamber. Relief flashed across her face. "You did not save me because I would become Empress?" she asked. "No," Dalton said honestly. "Back then, I couldn't even predict my next meal." For a moment, she smiled. Not as an Empress. As the girl he once protected. The growing threat. The moment did not last. Alarms echoed through the palace. Sharp. Urgent. An officer rushed into the chamber. "Your Radiance, rogue AI fleet detected at outer perimeter." Dalton sighed. "Of course," he muttered. "The universe hates emotional moments." They moved quickly to the command center. Holographic star maps filled the air. Enemy ships appeared, dark crescent shapes glowing with violet energy. "They are self-directed warships," an admiral explained. "They adapt. They calculate. They do not retreat." Dalton stared at the formation. Something felt wrong. "They're herding your patrol ships," he said slowly. The admiral frowned. "Explain." "They're pushing them toward that red dwarf star. The gravity will disable engines." The officers went silent. Selenia turned to him. "What do we do?" He stepped closer to the map. "Send interceptors through the magnetic field corridor. AI systems struggle with unstable patterns. Then fake a retreat." The admiral hesitated. Selenia spoke firmly. "Do it." Minutes later, the plan worked. The AI ships fell into the trap. Explosions lit up the hologram. The enemy fleet retreated. 30 Imperial ships survived. The command center slowly relaxed. Selenia looked at Dalton with quiet pride. "You saved them." Dalton shrugged awkwardly. "I just hate bullies. Even mechanical ones." The balcony. Night fell over Helix Prime. Twin suns disappeared beyond the horizon. Dalton stood beside Selenia on a high balcony. The city glowed beneath them like a sea of stars. "For years," she said quietly, "I believed my feelings were gratitude." Dalton stiffened slightly. "And now?" he asked. She turned toward him. "They are not." Her voice was steady, but vulnerable. "I admired you. I searched for you. But today, seeing you again, I feel something deeper." Dalton swallowed. "You're an Empress," he said softly. "I'm just a retired soldier." "You are the man who taught me compassion," she replied. "You are the reason I lead differently than those before me." He looked at his scarred hands. "I thought I was just surviving." "You were shaping me." Silence settled between them. The wind moved gently around them. Finally, Dalton spoke. "So what happens now?" She stepped closer. "Stay," she said simply. "Not as a soldier. Not as an advisor. Just, stay beside me." He looked at her. Not as an Empress. As the girl who once clung to him in a burning city. He exhaled slowly. "I'm not very good at palace life." "I'm not very good at trusting people," she replied. A small smile formed on his face. "Well, I suppose we can both practice." Her long ears lifted slightly, a sign of happiness. "Is that a yes?" Dalton nodded. "Yeah, it's a yes." She gently pressed her forehead against his, a traditional gesture of her people. For the first time in 20 years, Dalton Crow did not feel like a forgotten soldier. He felt needed. Not for war. Not for strategy. But for who he was. Above them, the stars shimmered. The Empire was still vast. Threats still waited beyond the borders. But for now, the girl he once saved had grown into a ruler of worlds. And the man who thought he was insignificant had become the one person she trusted most. Sometimes, the greatest heroes are not the ones who seek power. Sometimes, they are the ones who kneel in the rubble and tell a frightened child that everything will be okay. And sometimes, that child grows up to rule the stars. The hidden conspiracy. Back in the command chamber, captured data from the attackers revealed encrypted communication. Dalton stood beside Selenia as analysts worked. "They call themselves the Pure Line," she explained. "They believe our species must remain untouched. No alliances. No integration." "And I represent the opposite," Dalton said. You represent evolution. He crossed his arms. I was just trying to retire peacefully. A new hologram appeared. Multiple Imperial governors flagged as suspected supporters. Not a small rebellion. A network. Dalton studied the pattern. They timed this, he said slowly. Right after the AI attack. Selenia understood immediately. A distraction. The AI fleet wasn't random. Her eyes widened slightly. They coordinated with machines. Dalton nodded. They don't care about tradition. They care about control. Silence. The realization was heavy. The Empire was not under attack from outside. It was rotting inside. The choice. Later that night, Dalton stood alone on the balcony. The city lights shimmered below. Selenia joined him quietly. I can send you away, she said softly. You would be safer. Dalton laughed quietly. You think they'll stop hunting me if I leave? She did not answer. He turned to her. You don't need to protect me. I do, she replied. Why? Because losing you once was enough. The honesty in her voice hit harder than any weapon. Dalton looked out over the Empire. I spent 20 years thinking I was insignificant, he said. Now I find out I'm apparently a political threat. You are hope, she corrected. He shook his head slightly. Then let's give them something real to fear. Her long ears lifted slightly. What are you suggesting? Dalton smiled faintly. Transparency. The broadcast. The next day, Selenia made an empire-wide transmission. All 40 systems. Every governor. Every citizen. Dalton stood beside her. Not hidden. Not secondary. Visible. My people, Selenia began calmly. There are those who fear change. Those who believe compassion weakens us. She paused. 20 years ago, during the burning of Virel Colony, a human soldier protected a child he did not know. He did not ask her species. He did not ask her future. He simply chose to help. Dalton swallowed slightly. That child was me. Shockwaves moved through the Empire's communication network. I stand here today because of that act, she continued. Strength is not purity. Strength is courage. She looked directly into the camera. And I choose courage. Dalton stepped forward unexpectedly. He wasn't planned in the speech. But he spoke anyway. I'm not a politician, he said plainly. I'm not noble. I'm not perfect. I was just a soldier who saw a kid in danger. He hesitated. If saving someone makes me a threat to tradition, then maybe tradition needs to change. Silence followed. Then, across the Empire, support messages began flooding in. From military units. From civilians. From governors tired of fear politics. The Pure Line had expected secrecy. Instead, they were exposed. The final confrontation. 2 days later, loyal fleets surrounded the main Pure Line stronghold. The rebel leaders attempted escape. They were captured. No civil war. No mass bloodshed. Because Selenia chose light over silence. Dalton stood beside her as the final report came in. It's over, the Admiral said. For now, Dalton corrected gently. Selenia nodded. Yes. For now. A new beginning. That evening, the balcony felt different. Not uncertain. Steady. Selenia turned toward Dalton. You could have left. Yeah, he said. But I stayed. She stepped closer. You are no longer just the soldier who saved me. Oh. You are the man who helped save the Empire. Dalton scratched the back of his neck. I prefer simpler titles. She smiled softly. And what title would you choose? He looked at her. Partner. Her breath caught slightly. That is acceptable. She placed her hand in his. Not as ruler and soldier. Not as debt and gratitude. But as equals. Below them, Helix Prime glowed brighter than ever. The Empire had faced fear. And chosen courage. And at the center of it all. Not a fleet. Not a weapon. But one simple human decision made 20 years ago. Help the child. Stay. Sometimes HFY is not about stronger weapons. Sometimes it is about stronger hearts. And this time, the Empire stood because one human refused to walk away. The Empire did not celebrate quietly. By morning, the entire capital knew. The Empress had kept the human soldier close. Too close. Dalton Crow woke up in a guest chamber larger than the apartment he once rented for 3 years. The walls were curved crystal. The ceiling displayed a slow-moving starfield. Soft music hummed in the air. He sat up slowly. "This is definitely not a detention cell," he muttered. A hovering service drone approached with a tray of food. Dalton stared at it. "Is this safe?" The drone blinked. "Nutrition value, optimal. Does that include taste?" The drone paused. "Acceptable." Dalton sighed. "I miss ration bars." Before he could finish eating, the doors opened. Selenia entered. But she was not smiling today. Behind her walked 3 members of the Imperial High Council. Tall, elegant, cold. Their long ears carried silver markings that showed authority older than Selenia's reign. Dalton stood up immediately. "Oh good," he said quietly. "Judgment breakfast." "The council speaks." The tallest council member stepped forward. "Veteran Dalton Crow," she said sharply. "You have influenced the Empress beyond acceptable limits." Dalton blinked. "I influenced her." "You advised her during a military crisis?" she asked. "You stood beside her on the sovereign balcony." "We were looking at the sunset." "You remained in private chambers." "That sounds worse than it was." The council member did not smile. Selenia's voice cut in. "Enough." Her tone shifted the room. Not uncertain. Not hesitant. Imperial. "He remains here by my order." The council exchanged glances. "With respect, Your Radiance," another member said. "The Empire watches everything. Already there are whispers. A human outsider cannot become central to Imperial power." Dalton raised a hand slightly. "Just to clarify, I have no interest in becoming central to anything. I barely want to be central to breakfast." Selenia almost smiled, but controlled it. The council continued. "Our enemies will see weakness. The AI fleets already test our borders. Internal governors question your focus." Silence filled the chamber. Dalton looked at Selenia. For the first time, he saw the pressure clearly. The weight of 40 star systems. And now, him. The threat from within. The council left with formal bows. The doors closed. Dalton exhaled. "Well," he said carefully, "that went poorly." Selenia walked toward the window. "They believe attachment makes rulers weak." Dalton leaned against the wall. "Does it?" She turned to him. "Does it make you weak?" He thought about the burning colony. About shielding her from falling debris. About staying when retreat would have been safer. "No," he said quietly. "It makes you brave." Her eyes softened. Before she could reply, the palace lights flickered. Alarms screamed. Not external defense alarms. Internal. Security breach. Selenia's posture changed instantly. "Location," she demanded. A hologram appeared in the air. Intruders inside the palace. Masked life signs. Moving toward the central power core. Dalton's stomach dropped. "Inside job," he said. She nodded. "Council loyalists?" he asked. "Possibly." Without hesitation, Selenia moved toward the exit. Dalton followed. "Please tell me I'm allowed to help." "You are," she replied. "The assassins." Smoke filled the lower corridors. Servitors lay damaged along the walls. Security drones sparked on the floor. Dalton picked up a fallen pulse rifle. "It feels like old times," he muttered. "Try not to enjoy it," Selenia said dryly. They turned a corner. 3 armored figures opened fire. Energy bolts slammed into the walls. Dalton grabbed Selenia and pulled her behind a support column. "You see why the council doesn't like me," he said. "I attract chaos." She activated a defensive shield around them. These are not random attackers. The armor bore no Imperial marks. Professional. Silent. Precise. Dalton studied their movement. They're not here for power, he said. They're here for you. She knew. The attackers split formation. 2 advanced. 1 flanked. Dalton leaned out, fired twice. 1 attacker dropped. Still got it, he whispered. The second moved fast. Too fast. Selenia stepped forward, her hands glowing with controlled energy. She projected a concentrated pulse that shattered the attacker's armor. The third attempted escape. Dalton tackled him. They crashed into the floor. The assassin struggled, reaching for a hidden blade. Dalton punched hard. The helmet cracked. For a moment, he saw the face. Not alien. Not AI. Imperial. An officer. The man whispered one word before biting down on something hidden in his mouth. Purity. Then he went still. Dalton froze. Selenia knelt beside him. Internal faction, she said quietly. Against humans. Dalton asked. Against change.